During the Middle Ages, there were thousands of ethnic tribes across the world. A lot of these larger groups are well known to us, like the Vikings, the Franks, the Anglo-Saxons, and the Mongols. But many of these much smaller tribes have ceased to exist, even though they still have an impact on our culture today in the words we use to describe actions or beliefs such as Hun, Vandal, Goth and Alan. Let's travel back now to the Middle Ages and take a look at some of these tribes, the famous and the not so famous. So, you think you know everything about knights, castles, and kings? Well, hold on to your chainmail because we're starting a history channel all about the Roman Empire. Now, I know what you're thinking, wait, Roman Empire, isn't that before my favourite medieval legends? Well, yes, but stick with me. Rome is where it all started. From the fall of the mighty empire to the rise of your medieval knights, it's a story that's all connected. So if you're ready to learn about this incredible time period, join the toga party over at our new channel, the Roman Empire. It's going to be totally worth the detour in your historical journey, so I'll leave a link to it in the description below. And now for today's video, welcome to Medieval Madness. Huns. Between the 4th and 6th centuries, the Huns were a nomadic people who inhabited Eastern Europe, the Caucasus, and Central Europe. They were best known for accelerating the collapse of the Western Roman Empire and generally bringing terror to Europe. They were skilled horsemen who were notorious for their fierceness in battle and their brutality towards their conquered peoples. With the help of their brilliant military leader Attila, who reigned during the first half of the 5th century, and who the Christians of the day referred to as the, quote, Scourge of God, the Huns established a vast empire that included sections of modern-day Russia, Hungary, and other European nations like Germany and France. The Huns became so powerful that it was easier for both Western and Eastern Roman empires alike to pay tribute to Attila, rather than have his armies constantly attacking and pillaging the provinces. These days, the term Hun evokes pictures of mounted soldiers engaged in acts of utter cruelty and brutality, and is used to refer to any savage, impolite, and destructive individual, or just, an affectionate name for your partner. Popularized by the writings of Roman authors such as the soldier and historian Ammianus Marcellinus, who described the Huns as a race savage beyond all parallel, barbarians with scarred faces and large bodies. Despite their conquering nature, the Hun Empire was short-lived. After the death of Attila in 453, the kingdom was split between his 3 sons who were unable to keep the empire together because of infighting. Very little is known about the Hunnic culture, and archaeological remains are scarce. We can only rely on the heavily biased writings of their enemies to try and build a picture of their lives. During the First and Second World Wars, Allied propaganda often referred to the Germans as Huns, as the word had become so associated with cruelty and barbarism. Varangians. The Varangians, primarily from present-day Sweden, were Viking traders, conquerors, and settlers. During the 8th and 9th centuries, they settled in modern-day Belarus, Ukraine, and Russia, establishing the state of Kievan Rus, the first East Slavic state. They also formed the Byzantine Varangian Guard, who from the 10th to the 14th centuries were an elite unit of the Byzantine army, and served as personal bodyguards to the emperors. According to the 12th century Russian primary chronicle, a group of Varangians settled in Novgorod in 862 under the leadership of the chieftain Rurik. It was Rurik's relative, Oleg the Wise, who established the state of Kievan Rus, which was later ruled by the Rurik dynasty. The Varangians travelled around the ports and river systems of Rus, engaging in trade and undertaking acts of piracy and mercenary service. They controlled the Volga trade route between the Baltic and Caspian seas, making deals with the Muslims and the Dnieper and Dniester trade route, leading to the Black Sea and Constantinople trading with the Greeks. The routes connected the Byzantine Empire and the Abbasid Caliphates across medieval Europe, and were the most important trade links at that time. Eventually, most Varangians were converted to Orthodox Christianity from Norse paganism. With the decline of the Viking Age, the migration of Scandinavian to Rus stopped, and they were gradually integrated by the East Slavs at the end of the 11th century. Picts. The Picts lived in what is now Scotland, north of the Firth of Forth during the early Middle Ages. They were first referred to as Picti by the Romans, which translated from the Latin to painted ones. This is likely to be because they liked to cover their bodies in tattoos. Modern historians refer to their territory as Pictland. The Picts were, in fact, ferocious warriors, and despite the Roman conquest of the Bretons, they were unable to take control of the tribe or conquer what would become Scotland. The Picts used guerrilla warfare tactics and lived a nomadic life without fixed communities. Hadrian's Wall, also known as the Picts' Wall, and the later Antonine Wall were built across the north of England by the Romans to separate Britain from what the historian Augusta refers to as barbarians. They spoke the Pictish language, which is now extinct, and had their own mysterious culture and art. Monumental Pictish carved stones can still be found across northern Scotland and its islands. In 685 AD, the Picts took part in one of the most decisive battles in Scottish history, the Battle of Dun Nectane against the Northumbrian Angles, who lived and ruled in the northeast of England. If the Picts had lost, then the country of Scotland might never have existed. This account of the battle was recorded in the 12th century chronicle of Holyrood. Quote, "In the year 685, King Ecgfrith rashly led an army to waste the province of the Picts, although many of his friends opposed it. And through the enemy's feigning flight, he was led into the defiles of inaccessible mountains and annihilated with great part of his forces he had brought with him." Despite their reputation as fierce warriors, the Picts disappeared from history around the end of the first millennia. It's likely that they were absorbed into another tribe called the Gaels, and together they created the Kingdom of Alba, an early name for the Kingdom of Scotland. Vandals. These Germanic people were first reported as inhabitants of what is now modern-day Poland at the time of the Roman Empire. In the early medieval period, around the 5th century, they travelled across the Rhine and established kingdoms on the Iberian Peninsula and then in the western Mediterranean islands and into North Africa. In 439, they established a kingdom there under King Genseric. 16 years later, the Vandals successfully sacked the city of Rome. The plundering went on for 2 weeks, and Genseric and his Vandal army looted huge amounts of treasure. They tore down the aqueducts that supplied the city with water and ripped off the roof from the temple of Jupiter Optimus Maximus, taking away the gilt bronze roof tiles, which is where the modern word vandalism has its roots. It's possible that Rome was only spared from slaughter and destruction by fire because Pope Leo the Great pleaded with Genseric for mercy. On leaving Rome, the Vandals returned to North Africa and took the Roman Empress Licinia Eudoxia and her 2 daughters with them. The Germanic Vandal kingdom collapsed in 534 after a year-long war with the Byzantine forces of Emperor Justinian I, who reconquered the province for the Eastern Roman Empire. Alans. The Alans were an ancient Iranian tribe. They were a nomadic people. Like the Huns, they were known for their skilled horsemanship. For around 300 years, from 450, the Alans were caught in the middle of the military conflicts between Iran and the Byzantiums. After the Hun invaded the North Caucasus region, many Alans migrated west, others joined the Huns, the Vandals, and the Visigoths, travelling to the Iberian Peninsula and Africa. Those who remained in their original area converted to Byzantine Orthodoxy in the early 10th century. In Europe, they became known for the Alaunt, their huge mastiff-type dogs used for hunting and guarding. The breed is now extinct, but the Spanish breed Alano is still used for cattle herding and boar hunting. The Alans established a network of tribal alliances between the 9th and 12th centuries, which eventually developed into the Christian kingdom of Alania. When the Mongols crushed the kingdom in 1239, the Alans split off into 3 groups. Some went west into Europe and settled in Hungary. Others retreated into the Central Caucasus, and a 3rd group moved east to Beijing and became guards in service to the Mongol Khans. However, they didn't go without a fight. According to the Italian archbishop and explorer Giovanni da Pian del Carpine's report from 1250, at one mountain siege the Alans resisted the Mongols for 12 years, quote, When they begin to besiege a fortress in the land of the Alans, we believe they have been besieging it for 12 years, and they put up courageous resistance and killed many Tartars, including many noble ones. Bretons. The Bretons are an ethnic group that still exists today. They emigrated from Great Britain to northwest France from the 3rd to the 9th centuries after the collapse of Roman Britain, particularly from the areas of Devon and Cornwall in the southwest of England. They took with them their Celtic language, which evolved from Cornish and Welsh. During the Norman conquest of England, the Bretons were the most notable of the non-Norman forces. Many Breton families who held the top positions in the new society were married to Normans. Uriankhai. This was a term given to a group of northern forest peoples by the Mongols. At the start of the Mongolian Empire, which began in the 13th to the 14th centuries, the Uriankhai lived in central Mongolia. The 13th century statesman and historian Rashid al-Din Hamadani, who lived in Yuan China, a Mongol-led imperial dynasty, described the forest Uriankhai people as living an extremely isolated life in the Siberian forests, hunting on skis and living in tents made from birch bark. Some Uriankhai still live in the Kentai Mountains. Visigoths. Not to be confused with people who dress in black and listen to Joy Division, this Germanic tribe first appeared in the Balkans under the command of King Elric I as a barbarian military ally of the Romans. It's not known what their origins were, although they were possibly the descendants of the Thervingi who came from the plains of the lower Danube River. Relations between the Romans and the Goths was tenuous. In 410, under Alric's rule, the Goths invaded Italy and sacked Rome. The Goths settled in southern Gaul in Western Europe and established an independent kingdom with its capital in Toulouse. However, their rule in Gaul was ended by the Franks under Clovis I when they were defeated at the Battle of Vuil in 507. The Visigoths are most famous for their governance over Spain and Portugal, where they built several churches. Around 589, under the rule of Reccared I, they converted to Nicene Christianity. In 654, the Visigoth Code was completed. It brought together the Romani and Gothi laws as Hispani laws. This meant that everyone in the kingdom lived under the same legal code, combining Catholic, Germanic, and Roman laws and integrating the people. At the Battle of Guadalete in 711, the Visigoths were defeated by an Arab and Berber invasion force. Their kingdom fell quickly after the assassination of Roderick, the Visigoth king. Several other elite leaders were also killed, and the Gothic kingdom collapsed. Semigallians. The Semigallians were a Baltic tribe that inhabited northern Lithuania and the south-central region of modern-day Latvia. During the 13th century Northern Crusades, which were campaigns to Christianize the peoples around the shores of the Baltic Sea, the Semigallians were renowned for their prolonged fight against the Teutonic Knights and German Crusaders. During the Viking Age, the Semigallians were involved in battles with the Swedes, and the Danish historian Saxo Grammaticus noted that the people of Semgala were crushed by the Viking Starkerd. In 1106, when the Rurikid, who were descendants of the Varangians, tried to enslave the Semigallians, they were defeated, and the Russian chronicles claim that as many as 9,000 Russian soldiers were killed. By the 13th century, the Livonian Order, a branch of the Teutonic Knights, began a huge campaign against the Semigallians. In 1290, along with burning crops to cause famine, the Livonians destroyed the last remaining castle, so 100,000 Semigallians migrated to Lithuania to continue their fight against the Germans. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Medieval Madness. Please do subscribe if you enjoyed this video, as we do put out a new episode every Friday. Cheers everyone, I'll see you next week for another episode.